Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sunny Bonnell. With just $250 in her pocket, Sunny and her partner, Ashley Hansberger, dropped out of college and founded Motto, a branding company focused on helping companies be rare and different. That was 16 years ago. Now they are teaching leaders to go beyond the conventional ideas of management. Sunny and Ashley are the authors of a book called Rare Breed, a guide to success for the defiant, dangerous, and different. This is a new kind of leadership thinking, which challenges conformity and dismantles a business as usual approach to leadership. I'm excited to have Sunny on the show to talk about this interesting topic. So Sunny, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am really glad to have you on the show. I think it's going to be a really interesting topic for our listeners. And
Sure.
The first thing I want to do is start off, let you talk a little bit about your origin story, how you guys started Motto, and how did you get it to be so successful? What was your approach, and how did it, what led to so much success?
So you had touched on that Ashley and I are co-founders. We actually met in a Chicago snowball fight in our early teens, and we have grown up together. We went to college together, and in our early 20s, we dropped out of college together to start Motto. And as you said, we had $250 and a dream. We had no prior business experience. And in this small town that we were trying to kick this off in, we were heavily doubted. Everyone told us that we would fail. Well, that was 15, 16 years ago. And now we have led Motto to become one of the top branding and leadership organizations, companies in the country. We have clients such as Google, Microsoft, Hershey's, 20th Century Fox, and we have really earned a reputation for pushing boundaries, breaking rules, and really activating positive change inside companies. And I think all of that stems back to being a bit of the outlier in the beginning. We started in a very small coastal town. There were only a few established players. And we didn't realize it at the time, but we were probably a bit of a threat because we didn't have another blueprint to follow. There was no, long storied branding founder that we could point to and say, we want to be that, or we could follow in their footsteps. We were literally tearing up the rule book and starting from scratch. And that really led to a very unconventional approach to not only building our own business, but building the brands of the companies that we were being brought into service. And, what I think we've begun to become known for is working with one-of-a-kind brands, really helping leaders solve very tough problems using brand as the lens, but also I feel like we're a little bit of that branding agency.
Yeah.
And our work is just, it's not always typical in the way that we approach. And I think that really stems from those early days of not having anyone else to follow. So we just sort of carved our own path, created our own methodology. And then now that turned into a book, and now a leadership and team workshop and training, and now a full-fledged YouTube show where we interview cultural provocateurs and real rare breeds in the industry who are doing game-changing things. So it really has become kind of the ethos and philosophy of everything that we do.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, what I sense is that, like there's a rebellious spirit in the two of you right from day one. And it's almost the thread within the entire business, everything that you're doing from branding to leadership training. So the question I might have for you is, where did this rebellious nature come from? Well, you seem to both have it.
Oh, yeah. So that's true. Well, I really believe that we are born with certain traits, and those certain traits kind of emerge at different points in our life. And sometimes I think those traits are either awakened within us by those around us, mentors, friends, parents, teachers. And other times I think those things are silenced. And, I always look at it as like, are we nurtured and supported? Other times we're not. And how does that define our personality and the traits that we have defined typical rare breeds might have? I think while rebellion was in my nature, I think that audacity was more prominent. I dreamed really audaciously. I still do. I've always reached beyond my grasp. You can never tell me that anything is impossible. I see possibility where others see boundaries. I'm always pushing in the room to do better, to reach further, to dream bigger. And, you know, when I take the rare breed quiz, which I'm sure you'll mention here in a minute, but, and listeners can also take this as well, but we developed this quiz that you can take to define which of the 7 rare breed traits are your primary virtue. And every time I take it, I get audacious, and I'm like, well, that's kind of true. And I think it stems from that my grandfathers and my father were both entrepreneurs, and they were self-made. You know, one of them couldn't read or write. He was a coal miner. He'd leave with a car and he'd come back with a pistol, and he just knew the art of negotiating. And, you know, my dad started his company with like $150. So even less money than Ashley and I had. And they really started their companies from nothing. And I think what they had was this guts and vision, and they wrestled hardship into being successful. And you only do that when you have an audacious backbone. And I think I really certainly have that.
Well, clearly. Yeah, clearly. So, you know, one of the things, you know, when I was reading through the material of what you guys do in Motto and how you work with companies, you say that you want them to adopt a mindset of being rare and different, and you want them to stand out. Now, why is this so important for brands? Because I think, you know, today we see a lot of cookie cutter brands out there, and everybody's sort of trying to do the same thing. So your team says, no, we're going to be different. And why do you do that? Why is that so important?
Well, I think you have to kind of go back to the thesis of the book. So, you know, in order to kind of understand that thinking, you first need to understand what the book is about. So Rare Breed is a book about a curious question, which is, what if you could take the parts of yourself that other people criticize, society criticize, traits that they call defiant, dangerous, and different, and how do you turn those same counterintuitive traits that society teaches us to make invisible? How do you turn those into your selling points? And so at the heart of Rare Breed are these 7 so-called vices: rebellious, audacious, obsessed, hot-blooded, weird, hypnotic, and emotional. These 7 traits, we're often taught, are cautionary tales. Right. In order to succeed, you have to not be these things, right? So we've all heard like, oh, you're so emotional, or, you know, he's just like too much of a ruckus maker. You know, he's a problem. He's a troublemaker, or she's a troublemaker. And in the book, we really reframe these same vices as virtues. You know, we give a floor to the misfit. And I think it's really a call to arms for anyone who's ever been told that they don't belong, or that there's something about them that's flawed. So when you kind of understand where we're coming from in terms of not only defining the traits, but understanding the traits within ourselves, you begin to realize that not only is this how we operate in our life and in our careers, but it's also in how we lead. And so when you're thinking about your company and your leadership style, you know, we're all trained in those classic leadership traits, right? Like stability and calmness and, you know, decision-making, and like all the kind of typical traits that you read about in thousands of leadership books. But there's also another side to that I think, where sometimes being a little bit defiant and being different and maybe even a little bit dangerous in your thinking is actually a gift. And you can really succeed because of who you are, not despite who you are. So business, I think, prides itself on unique perspectives and innovative ideas. But the truth is that in all the organizations that we have been in, and we've been in at this point thousands, some of the biggest brands in the world we have walked the halls of. And the truth of the matter is that most of those ideas get shut down. The most different and dangerous and interesting ideas often just get left on the floor. They never really see the light of day. You know, by the time that they've gotten to the top, there's so many bullet holes in them, you can't recognize it anymore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the danger in stripping away and discouraging these idiosyncrasies is that we smother the rebellious visionary fire that truly leads to great breakthroughs. And what we believe is by embracing this kind of rare breed mindset, not only as a person within the company, but someone who's leading the company, and also as a business, is that the people working inside of it, they have to be allowed to make the contributions that they know that they're capable of making. But what companies don't understand and often do is that the people that are most likely to stir up trouble and express those unpopular opinions or otherwise make the top brass uncomfortable, they're exactly the people that you need. They're your secret weapon to everything.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking, I spent 22 years in corporate America, and I can tell you that conformity was the rule, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't want the out of the box thinkers. I mean, we did, but like you said, once your ideas get filtered up to the top, they were, they became corporate, right? And they were flattened out, and they were, and it's almost like we didn't want to listen to the ideas from the people in the trenches, the ones with the crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And, but for me, at least, as somebody that was in that space and just had all these ideas, I always felt frustrated. Like, in fact, that's the reason I started my own company, because I was so frustrated they wouldn't listen to an obvious idea how to change this industry, that we just did it on our own. We left and we did it on our own.
Well, that's what rare breeds do.
Yeah. And I think that's it. They get frustrated and they say,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I'm going to do it on my own. If you're not going to listen to this idea, we're going to do it on our own.
Yeah.
So like, if you're a manager, we've got a lot of managers, leaders, you're listening on this podcast. How do you identify the rare breeds that are the rare breed leaders that are in your organization? What kind of, what are some characteristics they exhibit that make it obvious that this is an interesting person in your organization?
Yeah. Well, I think in leaders, we look for the conventional leadership traits. As I mentioned, they're steady, they're decisive, they're consistent, they're calculated, they're diplomatic, they're logical. And those qualities are extremely important. But rare breeds, we have found, they think, act, and communicate in an entirely different way. And they operate on a different frequency. And the rare breed, they just tear conventional thinking apart. They eat the status quo for breakfast. And rare breeds who are on the payroll, they already possess these kind of hard to manage qualities. We call them virtues. But, to most managers, right, they're difficult, they're defiant, they're dangerous. And, the truth is that they fuel those breakthroughs, and they redefine industries. And they, things that are telltale signs are, their neurotic obsession, with every minute detail. There's an angry intolerance for injustice. There's an absurd, outrageous whimsy, a sense of whimsy. There's a gleeful contempt for like shaking the status quo to its knees.
Yes.
And as managers, I think we want them, but when they appear, we don't know what to do with them.
Right.
And so rare breed has really turned into, we didn't write rare breed as a how-to book. It was more of like, look, there's a lot of people out in the world who have been made to feel invisible, and we see you, we hear you, we know you're out there, and, we should know the names of who they are. And more importantly, to all these leadership books sometimes tell you that there's something about you that's flawed. And I was like, why is that? Why does something about us always have to change in order to succeed? And by sort of redefining that question, I think what it allows us to do is help the rare breed navigate the world a little bit more eloquently, even though they're kind of, breaking things and bumping into walls and stirring up trouble. But in all the right ways. This isn't meant to be, of course, with rare breeds, they do have a dark side. There are destructive traits. And we go into great detail in the book about what it means to be a force for good versus like a force for evil. If you think back to some of the most influential rare breeds of all time, like they've also been some of the most manipulative and some of the most dangerous. And so what we're kind of advocating for is not that particular person, but the real rare breed who is using those gifts for good, really to help companies win and again, and be a competitive edge, and also to, drive innovation. But what we have to do as organizations is learn how to harness them and awaken the potential and truly see them for their full potential. Because what happens is, I think there was a Harvard Business Review study where, fewer than 10% of people work in companies that encourage nonconformity. So what that tells me is that people leave their real selves behind at the door,
They
now
do.
the virtual door. And, the question I always wondered was, well, how many great ideas, how many great minds and innovation are we losing out on because we punish those for even trying? And how many of these rare breeds walk out of jobs they don't feel connected to? How many people are leaving because they don't feel seen? And if this, the book didn't start out this way, but it's now turned into kind of this framework of thinking that, some of the top companies are asking us to come in and like share this thinking so that they can not only identify who on their team might be a rare breed, but more importantly, how do we hire and retain them? Because sometimes we can get them in the door, but we don't know how to keep them. As you said, you left and went and did your own thing.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to realize is at stake, is that we're pushing some of our most innovative people out the door because we just simply don't understand them or have the tools or the language to understand how to best work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk a lot of in my leadership writing in terms of really getting to know the people that work for you, right? Really just trying to understand how they tick. And part of that is recognizing their different personality characteristics and things that they, what are their interests, where are their passions and what have you. And I've always found that, when I started as a leader, I thought I had to have all the answers. And what I learned over 30 years of leading people is that the answers were always right there in the team. It's just
the answers in the question.
Yeah. So it was about asking the right questions and taking the time to actually listen to the ideas. And I just recently wrote a book, and I actually talk about several crazy ideas I had people come up with and ended up changing our business model completely.
Yeah.
But having that ability to listen to that crazy idea and say, all right, I don't know how that'll work, but just giving it a little chance to put, get that seed in the ground and give it a little bit of water and see where it goes. Because sometimes we in management, we're quick to bury a good idea because it doesn't seem to match what we're used to or what we've seen before happen. So I think that's really good. Just having that ability to just sit back and listen and allow your more creative minds or the out of the box thinkers or, rare breeds to actually, get a chance to express their ideas and try their ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So you mentioned it. These personality types are, there's pros and there are cons to them, right? I was thinking about the rebellious leaders. So the ones that are rebels, right? There's pros and cons to that, right? They don't like conformity, right? But what are some pros and cons for some of the personality types like that, like a rebellious leader, for example?
Yeah, I think, so while everyone else is perfectly fine blending in, rare breeds, rare breed leaders, thinkers, artists, they do everything differently, and they create that necessary change. I think they have a few tells, like in poker. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in the work that we've done is that they have a knack for making people feel really uncomfortable. They'll push against the boundaries. They say what others won't. They turn in brilliant work and, sometimes make their colleagues look bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
The workplace contract will say, sort of say like, this is our culture, pour yourself into it. And I think while rare breeds understand that and they appreciate that, they often will kind of violate that contract too, because they just can't help themselves. And I think the second thing that we've seen is they have zero tolerance for, we've always done it this way. They hate it when a company or industry sticks to norms for norms' sake. They love to graffiti over pretty walls. They are natural insurrectionists. If something doesn't work or there's a better way to get the job done, they're going to be the first in line to take the sledgehammer to conventional wisdom. And I think the question that we have to ask is what if we could, build our culture and brand around these anti-conformist qualities and really lean into them. You had kind of asked about the dark side. So in the book, we go into great detail about the dark side of these traits. And, if you're kind of a hypnotic person, right? Say you're sort of we all know that charismatic person in the room that you're sort of spellbound with. The dark side of that can be that it's manipulative and it can be defrauding, and they can use that, again, to persuade or manipulate in very negative ways. We're really talking about, hypnotic charm as being something where, you're inspiring your team around you to far exceed their own expectations. You're using it for the right reasons. There was a great documentary recently, I don't know if you saw it, but with Adam Newman for WeWork. I think he's a perfect example of kind of a rare breed that sort of unraveled. He was notorious for audacious vision. And yet what I think happened over time was that, and I think sometimes with certain, rare breeds that drink their own Kool-Aid, they become sort of hubristic. Mm-hmm. And if you really watch that documentary or even study sort of his ascent to fame, and then of course being kicked out, of course he got a heavy handout on the way out. But I think that dark side can be very destructive, and it can be your undoing. So for rare breed traits, what's really interesting about them is that they are as powerful as they are perilous. And we have to be very careful, not only in ourselves, but in the people that we, lead, that we're understanding the line between the light and the dark side of these traits. And often it's murky and indistinct, and I think the difference between rare breeds that have really figured it out is that they fully know it's at work, and they know that they can really use it to unlock pieces of themselves, and not only themselves, but in others. So, that's what we have to kind of look out for with specifically rebellious rare breeds, because they're notorious for just like kicking up dirt and causing a little bit of ruckus. But at the same time, you don't want it to be destructive or, right. To be rebellious for rebellious sake. You want it to have a motive and a real purpose for good.
So when you go into a company and you're working with a company with respect to leaders and looking at these rare breed characteristics in leaders, what are some of the things that happen as you teach, train, evaluate? What are some of the shifts that you see happening in these companies? And what comes out of these sessions that you have with these companies?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think we've done, it's really extraordinary with rare breed specifically, is there was no workshop. We had this is a funny story. One of the head of brand at Microsoft picked up the rare breed in an airport and read it on a flight from New York to LA, I think. And by the time he had touched down, he was like, I need to talk to you. And we need this thinking inside the company. And he was like, we'd love you to do a workshop. And I was like, there is no workshop, but we'll create one. And so we spent like all of Christmas and basically through the holidays creating a rare breed sort of beta workshop that we could go into companies and teach them this mindset and thinking. And we did it over the course of a couple of days. And day one was really focused on sort of educating, like, what is the rare breed? What is the rare breed mindset? How do you identify them? What traits do you need to be looking out for? And then we did a really interesting exercise where we had all of the team take the quiz. And so we revealed the rare breeds within their team. And they were able to sort of identify all of the traits within the team. And also what it does for teams is they begin to see each other very differently. Right. So if I know you, John, are Did you take the quiz? What are you?
I didn't take the quiz.
Oh, well, you need to.
I should have before this podcast.
Yeah. I'm like, what? You didn't take the quiz? This would have been perfect. We'll take the quiz and then put it in the show notes.
I will.
And when you release this episode, but we had all of them take the quiz. And if you know, John, that you are emotional and that I am audacious, very quickly, we're able to understand each other just a little bit better. That there's buttons, right? That I might push that for an emotional empath who sort of, is on a different frequency and feels the room in different ways and might be highly sensitive and emotional, working with a rebellious or audacious mindset, there could be some, gruffness there. There could be some misunderstanding, or, this person's like, oh, he's just so sensitive. And you're like, Sunny's just so crazy in her thinking and too audacious. And we shouldn't do that, or you're rubbing me the wrong way. And so what it helped them sort of do is have another way to communicate with one another as a team, and also get forged in the fire about, knowing each other's traits and being able to leverage some of those traits in the service of innovation. So it was a really big aha moment for their team. And then in day 2, we talked a lot about rare breed moves and like what it really means to like, what are some of the most audacious ideas that they've had as a company that could never really fully be realized? Why?
I like that.
And yeah. And so then what happened after that was the workshop was so successful that their teams began taking the quiz and then working and doing their own like mini rare breed workshops within their own groups. And it was really, really cool. And then, now we've gotten opportunities from several organizations, from people that were in that workshop that told other people and friends. And now we can't even handle the amount of inquiries that we're getting for the workshops to actually do them. Like we have a waiting list, essentially. We don't have enough bandwidth to actually do them all. So now we're trying to kind of sort through, well, how do we actually like really turn this into something that becomes, a blueprint that we go in and do with companies just to help them innovate, while knowing that each organization is truly unique. And we kind of need to understand like all the factors at play there, but it's been so successful. And we heard that it was one of the most innovative workshops they've ever been a part of. And I think the truth is just like our own career, we didn't have some other workshop that we could go and like basically, look to. We had to create it from scratch. And in doing so, you come at it with just kind of an unhingedness. There is no limitations because you don't really know what's right or wrong. You just kind of think like, well, if we're going to call it rare breed, it better not be boring. Right. Yeah. So, it's, and now we're doing like lunch and learns where we go in for like 60 or 90 minutes. And now we're doing keynotes and talks on, rare breeds at work, creating a culture of innovation and belonging, what it really takes to do that. And so it's become way more than a book.
Outstanding. So, if, as leaders are listening to this, what would you have them do if they wanted to find out more information about this, or if we've kind of got them interested in this topic, what should they do next if they wanted to kind of find out more about this? Obviously take the quiz like I didn't do, right?
Yeah. You better take it right after we get off of here, John. Yeah, well, they can go to, so any listeners who are really interested in this, obviously the book is available wherever books are sold, on Amazon. And we're always grateful for somebody buying the book and really getting a sense of it. Because I think first you have to see it in yourself before you can see it in others. And then the other part of that is you can go to rarebreedleaders.com and learn more about our workshops there, and obviously take the quiz there, buy the book there, and just get a sense of like that thinking and what we're trying to change the conversation around how rare breeds are seen in the workplace, and to dismantle business as usual so that we can carve a space for more of those voices. We need to build that longer table so that we can have more women at the table, more people of color at the table, and that diversity doesn't become some checklist, right? That we're checking off, but rather like we're seeking out diversity of thought, and we're not looking for people just like us. We're looking for people who share very diverse thinking than we do, from very different backgrounds, so that we can in fact create fabrics and cultures that are truly one of a kind.
I
And
like that.
that's our mission.
Is everyone a rare breed when they go through this? Is everyone,
Mm.
or are there some that are just like, nah, I'm kind of a conformist. I just want to.
Well, I think we're all an original, right?
Okay, right.
I think, there's not another John, right? There's only you, your blueprint, your thumbprint, your mark on the world is truly your own. Just as it is for anyone. I think what separates rare breeds from everyone else is, while everyone else is kind of, you know, hiding those pain in the ass qualities, rare breeds are really leaning into theirs.
Yeah,
and that's the difference that I've seen between people who are kind of identify as one and those who are not. Are they fully recognize that there is a superpower? It's at work within them. It is not only at work within the way that they choose their path and career, but it's in how and why they make the decisions that they make. And I believe it can also be applied to not only the way we lead, but the way we brand our companies. And so, we're seeing the possibility of this in so many extreme ways. It's really mind blowing at times. We have a rare breed brand wheel where you can sort of see like where you fall on that spectrum. And it's just a really interesting way to look at the world and also each other, because you begin to identify and see the possibility in other people, and you recognize that the differences are what makes us who we are. That you don't want to look like everybody else. You don't want to be like everybody else, and that's okay. You should truly fully embrace all of who you are, not just the pretty parts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some people who've listened to this podcast a long time, I always talk about, that leadership is an individual business. It's a people business, right? You can't take a cookie cutter approach to leading people. Everyone is going to bring a different qualities to the table, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have some of these rare breeds and some of these outside the box thinkers, and if you can harness that, right, and you can appreciate that and not try to put them in a box, but allow them to, to practice what they want to practice, you can do some amazing things as a company. Even if you're at a lower level and you've got a team, you've got this one person that's always got these crazy ideas, and you're willing to listen and do them. I can tell you for a fact. I mean, I can't, they work and they create some amazing change in your company. So, don't be afraid to embrace the people that are not, that are thinking crazy thoughts or have these crazy ideas or these grandiose visions. Take the time to listen, because I think you might find that it's a new way to go. It's a better way to go. And I've always believed in listening to crazy ideas and giving people an opportunity to try them. Like, even if you do it on a small basis, okay, well, I don't know if that'll work, but let's do a pilot project. Let's just see if it works and see if any customers appreciate it, or they like it, or they want it. This particular feature of a product or this particular offering, let's try it. Sounds like a crazy idea, but let's see what happens, and giving those opportunities, you never know where they're going to go. Give it a pilot, give it a small, a trial run. So
we don't let people fail.
Yeah.
And we don't let them even try most of the time.
We don't.
And, we're always looking at the bottom line and the numbers and, trying to make it all work. And, I'm advocating right now I went to Microsoft and I was like, we should create a rare breed award, for the most defiant, dangerous, and different idea there is, actually celebrate it, and put money behind it to see if it can fly. I mean, look at what Elon Musk is doing, putting people on Mars. I mean, people thought he was nuts, and now they're just like, and he pulled it off. It's the people that you tell it's impossible. The rare breeds are like, well, let me show you here, hold my drink.
Right. Yeah. I think of like in sports analogy, I think of Tom Brady as someone who
such a rare breed.
He is. And he's got a chip on his shoulder, and he operates like, you pick me sixth in the draft, I'll show you. And he's been showing people for 20 something years, he's never forgotten about him getting, going to the sixth round in the draft. And he's taking that and he's showing the world what he can do. And that's a powerful, you just look at someone like that, it's really powerful what they can do just with a mindset. It's like, I'm going to show them, you know.
It is a mindset. I think Rare Breed is a mindset. And if you actually really study him, and I've studied him at great detail, so I know a lot about Tom Brady actually, but what I think is really fascinating about him is that he is, he goes above and beyond the amount of willpower and discipline, and he's willing to get up at 3 and 4 a.m. to outwork and outperform and out hustle everyone else. And, the amount of his diet, his nutrition, his regimen, his work ethic, all of these things, right? Like the average person, even some of the best players in the world will not do what he does. They will not forgo the amount of discipline that he's willing to take on. And he is one of the, he's literally like a phenomenon.
Right.
And it's because, actually I talked to Dr. Kaku about this, Michio Kaku. He was just on the world-renowned scientist. He was just on Rare Breed, our show. And we were talking about, I said, as a scientist, explain the rare breed to me, like how are they sort of on this scale? And he's like, they're not on this scale. That's the point, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's the bell curve, right? And we kind of hit that peak, and there's these sort of outliers, these off the charts that are rare breeds. And it's just, the human nature. It's just that there's going to be a few that just kind of don't fall in line. And, they're just mind blowing in every sense of the word. And I think, Tom Brady's certainly one of those individuals.
Yeah. No, amazing. Well, very good. So your company again, so everybody can find it. What's their website?
So it's rarebreedleaders.com is where you can find all things Rare Breed, but also Ashley and I are co-founders of Motto, which is one of the top branding agencies in the country. We work with leaders and teams and organizations to align leaders and teams around that kind of big idea, and then work to develop the brand around the big idea. And then, of course, with Rare Breed being our book and our sort of series and workshop, we help teams and organizations uncover the rare breed within their team structures and be able to really bring them to life in the organization, and also tools and tactics to basically innovate with them at your side.
Outstanding. Well, we'll put links in the show notes for all the resources. And the book is Rare Breeds, A Guide to Success for the Defiant, Dangerous, and Different. And I believe this has been one of the most amazing interviews. And I really appreciate you being on the show, Sunny. I think this is some really good stuff. I think we all can take something away from it. And, I challenge those that are listening in, to think about the rare breeds you have in your organization. You probably can find them right away. You probably can name them right away, and look at those as their potential and look at those as virtues and not vices. And how can you channel that, that energy that's in those individuals. And I think you can go pretty far. So I really appreciate you being on the show, Sunny, and sharing all your insight.
Geez, thank you so much. It was such an insightful interview and so fun. And thanks so much for giving me the platform to share the message.
Well, thank you. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.